Destroyed as a fire swept through the Joe Slovo Informal Settlement in Milnerton. One person, we're told, has died. Gift of the Givers teams are currently on site doing assessments and providing relief. And for the latest, let's bring in the organization's Ali Sablay, who joins us now via our video link. And Ali, great to have you on the program again. Thanks as always for making time to speak to us. As a start, how bad was this fire? How's the damage looking?
It's been a busy 24 hours for the Gift of the Givers team. Yesterday morning, we were activated to a huge fire at the newest informal settlement in Wellington, where close to 200 structures have burnt out, leaving over 800 people displaced. While our teams were busy with assessments and delivering humanitarian aid there, we were then called by the Joe Slovo Informal Settlement community leaders and fire victims pleading for our assistance as the fire is sweeping through the informal settlement. Over 200 people displaced. Unfortunately, one person has passed on. So our teams are currently active at two huge fire sites, at the one in Joe Slovo and the one at newest informal settlement in Wellington. Tomorrow is the first day of school. You can imagine the trauma going through those young children as in a blink. They've lost all their school uniform, all their school stationery, community leaders, community members, fire victims, losing everything as the winds sped up within a few seconds. They had to evacuate with the clothing they had on their backs. And the situation is currently dire on the ground. Emotions are very high. Our teams are extending operations today and throughout the week.
Sure. And this has happened before at Joe Slovo. In fact, I can't remember just top of mind whether there were any casualties the last time. What are you hearing about what might have started this particular place?
You know, with the southeasterly wind blowing, it happened in the early hours of the morning as well. Community leaders informing us, it was a paraffin stove, or the investigation is still going on as there's different scenarios as to how the fire started. One saying it was an illegal connection, the other one saying it was the paraffin stove. And within a few seconds, as the one structure caught the light, we know with the structures built on top of each other, it was going to be that all the other structures was going to be affected. All credit due to the Drakenstein and the City of Cape Town Fire Department for extinguishing the blaze so rapidly. As if you look at the disaster site and you look at how the fire spread, it could have been much worse.
Sure. And of course, you mentioned, the fact that schools are reopening from tomorrow. I imagine among the long list of items that are needed is some kind of relief specifically for the children who need to be ready somehow for the first day of the second term.
Most definitely. So our teams is currently active on both sites. And unfortunately, at both sites, I've got to mention, there was disease at both sites. There was yesterday morning in Wellington, there was 2 people that have passed on. Joe Slovo, 1 person. Today, our teams was meeting with community members and with the parents to identify the children, to get their sizes, etc., to see which grade they're on. So at least in this week, for the first week of school starting, there's no delay in the school calendar. And as you correctly said at the beginning, it's not the first time a fire occurs in the Joe Slovo Informal Settlement. It's on a continuous basis. If it's not fires, it's floods. Winter season is a few months away, and it's quite concerning what the residents are currently going through. They have nothing to build on. We do know officials from the National Department of Human Settlements are on their way to both fire sites, but we hope for this residents' sake there's more a permanent solution, because it's not the first time some of these children are going through the same trauma. And speaking to health officials and speaking to the teaching staff as well, it does have a psychological effect on the young ones. Absolutely.
You've mentioned what was going to be my parting question there, Ali. The fact that, of course, the first quarter of the year is now done and dusted. We can feel temperatures, specifically in Joburg, beginning to drop. The winter season is certainly on the horizon. And sadly, what we see having taken place this past weekend is more commonplace in winter. It's really concerning that it's starting much earlier than anticipated this time around.
Most definitely, temperatures are dropping in Cape Town in the evening as well, and people are using any forms to keep them and themselves, their families warm. And when they do fall asleep, sometimes they do forget whether it's the fire, whether it's the paraffin heater, they do forget it on. And with the slightest wind blowing and how thin these structures are, it catches the lights so quickly, and sometimes it's devastating effects. as you correctly said, during winter when they forget these heaters on, they are still sleeping, and when the structure catches the light, there's always fatalities, and we saw that happening early yesterday. Gift of the Givers teams will be on the ground today to extend further humanitarian assistance in terms of hot meals, blankets, etc. And we are quite concerned. This early start to the second quarter, which we expect mostly flooding to occur. But we hope and pray there's a more permanent solution is found for these residents, that they do not rebuild as they are currently building the structures after every disaster.
Sablay, thanks as always once again for the work you do and for availing yourself for these crucial updates. Really do appreciate it. Ali, of course, is with the Gift of the Givers as that organization responds to 2 large fires over the past couple of days. In fact, in a 24-hour period, we're told, one in Milnerton at the Joe Slovo Informal Settlement where one person has died and another one in the Western Cape.